Righto, buddy miners. Sorry, lads. I was bloody driving the porcelain bus yesterday for 24 hours. I thought I was done with gastro, but since daycare finished, but it appears not.
Gastro's not done with you, Matty.
It's just been a prick of a fortnight. Wow. Oh,
Mate.
The big, as much as I was spewing yesterday, the biggest thing I was spewing about was not getting to mention Axis mining technology.
Yeah.
Like that, that's nearly worse than the gastro itself. My daily fix of talking about the trusted advisor for drill hole survey instrumentation. Oh, God, it's like a bloody part of me didn't exist yesterday.
Trying to do ads without you yesterday was a bit like a geo and a driller out on a rig that's not using a champ gyro or a champ ori.
That's it. That is. I couldn't have put that better myself, Travis. That is
Well
bloody
said.
perfect,
Well said.
mate. You'll see them and the bloody every other driller. I forgot to end Drill 24. Get your tickets for that as well. We're all going to be there. I missed plugging them yesterday too. Boys, what do we got? We got a bit of a uranium deal that I've bloody battled through stomach cramps to analyse in some way, shape or form. But
Is it a good deal?
I think it is for the value, for what they're getting and on a dollar per pound basis and a plant is pretty good bloody bang for buck, I think. And JD, you've gone deep into a little short report, Sunshine.
Very, very exciting, mate. We're going to be venture over to Newfoundland in Canada for a short report, so sit tight for that one.
Travis, what do you got, Sunshine?
Mate, the company I'm talking about was also the recipient of a short report earlier in the year. Adriatic Metals, the short report was probably a bit weak on, but they faced a lot of adversity and they hosted this investor webinar yesterday afternoon, Perth time. I'm keen to talk about what the update is because there's so much happening there and it's a riveting period of time for them. Don't know which way it's going to go yet, but futures.
Oh, big between the personnel changes, like there's a reset happening, it appears.
Yeah, lots of change.
Keen to hear what you got there. All right, let's rip in. UEC buys Rio Tinto's uranium assets in Wyoming. So, as always, since we haven't talked about them before, give a bit of UEC overview before we get into what the deal is. So before today, they had, and just remember, North America, US and Canada, there ain't shortage of M&A deals in uranium when you go through the history, how these companies are formed. And this is one of them. So before today, they had about 230 million pounds in measured and indicated U3O8 resource across US and Canada. So they just recommenced production at their Wyoming ISR hub and spoke project and looking to commence their second production area in Texas. Not yet known when that's going to happen. Both have got permitted processing facilities. The Texas operation was, I guess, the original UEC, where the Palangana mine produced about a bit over £500,000 in 2010 to 2016.
It's not very much over an annualised basis, is it?
No, but it's like permitted for friggin' £4 million a year.
Okay.
They can do there. Yeah. So I guess the Wyoming portfolio, that came about at the end of 2021. So UEC bought the Uranium One, America's portfolio for US $112 million back in the end of 2021. That included the processing plant. So Uranium One is part of Russia's Rosatom. Mm-hmm. So that's the same Uranium One that sold Honeymoon to Boss Energy. So first shipment of yellowcake out of there is anticipated for November or December this year. So and like for how much they're only looking to produce, according to the Canaccord note, about £400,000 for FY25, maxing out at about £1 million for this Christensen Ranch. And then they've got the other satellite deposits they're intending to bring online to hopefully ramp up to £4 million a year for the Wyoming bit, for that hub and spoke part of the Wyoming bit. And I think they've got they're licensed to process £2.5 million for the plant, but then they're anticipating to increase that to £4 million. So uncontracted as well, intending to sell everything into the spot market, which is interesting. Well, and what they call unhedged in, I know we say unhedged gold, I'd probably say uncontracted, but unhedged, same thing. But
that is my understanding of like the US producers, right? I've got this like preconception that US uranium producers and the restart projects, they're all there's a bunch of scattered, like quite small scale stuff that doesn't like move the needle too much on a per project basis. Is that fair?
And I think once these guys combine, like combine everything, so like, you know, £4 million there, probably maybe another potentially 4 in Texas, what extra they're going to get out of this acquisition today, plus any future stuff in the Athabasca Basin that I'll go through, like they might creep up towards a double digit producer, but long way away. Yeah.
Not small on the market cap front, $2.5 billion US.
Oh yeah,
Decent.
huge. Like, and a lot of M&A to get there, and like there, because in 2022 they acquired that Rough Rider project from Rio Tinto.
Oh yeah.
So that was for 146 million. 64 of it was in UEC stock. So that's in the eastern Athabasca Basin. So that's about 63 million pounds total resource, grading above 3%. So it's just west of that McLean Lake mill, which is 22.5% Denison, the rest Arano. So that's like a toll treat. There's plenty. I think there's multiple mills around there. That's one of them. Because McLean Lake, they toll treated 18 million pounds for Cigar Lake back in 2022. So there's an option there as well. And so that's then 2022, like the rest of their Athabasca Basin stuff, they took over UEX in pretty much the similar time that they did the Rio Tinto deal as well. And then they did another bloody deal with, it was only a smaller one with Rio Tinto as well. So that's how they've sort of accumulated this bloody shitloads of pound resource.
Common theme here, buying assets from Rio.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll comment on that, which probably indicates what Rio Tinto's thoughts on uranium are. So the deal today, UEC are purchasing 100% of Rio Tinto's Wyoming assets. So this is creating like a third hub and spoke operation. So adding to the Irrigara, how do you fucking say that? Irrigara or something. That's the existing Wyoming one they got from Uranium 1. They got the Hobson plant in Texas. This is going to be a third one. So, and it doesn't say if they're paying all cash or shares or anything. It just says the 175 million paid from their available liquidity. So I'm not sure if they're going to be raising or paying cash or offering some shares or.
I read it's cash. Yeah. Cash payment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think cash.
Yeah, I couldn't see the word cash. But anyway, we'll wait and see if it is. So because they've got like their last reported cash and liquid assets was US 303 million. So 95 cash, still got a bit under 1.5 million pounds of uranium physical. So that's worth about 112 mil at spot. They got 90 mil in equity investments. So I think they've raised capital each year by the looks, but then they were acquiring physical uranium from about 2021, I think, and then they sold 3.15 million pounds last year into the spot market. So sold an average price of $52 a pound, but I think it ended up being about a 40 mil profit for them. So that's obviously helped a bit of the cash they've got. So for this 175 million US, so they're getting the Sweetwater plant, which is licensed capacity of 4.1 million pounds. It's been on care and maintenance since 1983.
Wow.
Yeah. Only operated for 2 years.
There's some refurb that might be
but they said it's been maintained.
Maintained well. Rio standards.
Maintained for 41 years. And it's so there's going to be a bit of refurb there, no doubt.
Picking up the licensing is the
that's it.
Maybe
You just pay for that, wouldn't you?
Right.
Yeah. But it's a conventional mill. So it will be if they choose. So it looks like what they've picked up from this Rio deal is about half ISR, half conventional mining. So I think they'll have to do they've got to adapt that plant to, recover uranium from loaded resins for an ISR method. So a bit of work to do there. So, and probably that'll require additional changes to the licenses and permits. So they said it could take 1 to 2 years or so to get all that shit sorted. So, and within that, they're also getting 175 million pounds of uranium resource between the Red Desert and Green Mountain projects. So, as I said, half of it looks ISR amenable, half open pit. You can see on the, I don't know, it might be underground actually, I'm not sure. It just says conventional mining. So you can see on the tenement map here that what UEC had before this acquisition, all from that all come in from the Uranium 1 Americas acquisition in 2021. So this deal today solves the whole issue of not having a permitted processing facility. So that's that sorted. So they've got a pretty big holding there. So you'd be waiting for a restart decision for this acquisition, which will, probably go through in November or so. But before that, we'll likely hear a restart decision for the Texas operation by the year end. So that's licensed for £4 million. That Canaccord note said it realistically will only produce about £2 million for the first 2 to 3 years. Good to see some uranium M&A that makes geographical sense, you'd say.
This is the first one in a while, yeah.
But like, if you look at, I think they pretty much paid $1 a pound for the resource, and then the processing facility is as well. You're paying for the permit, obviously.
Yeah.
It looks pretty bloody Rio like.
Take it.
Catch you later. So I think it's
Yeah. What did they sort of say about a restart decision, mate? What's the kind of plan on when they want to press go?
Oh no, it just, I think what did they say? They got to obviously delineate and reconfirm a lot of the resource, do the studies and everything for the restart. So I think it wouldn't be not a year or two away, I'd say, especially if they got to convert the plan or anything like that. So. Yes, but they're just growing by bloody acquisition. As you said, what'd you say? $2.5 billion cap, are they?
Yeah, jumped to 12% on this one, so the market kind of liked it.
I think everything uranium jumped last night. Still got a bit of a bloody 3 Mile Island bloody boost up the backside. I think had 2 good nights on it, so that's going to be interesting. That 3 Mile thing, we were talking to Trav about it. It was interesting to see that, everyone's been talking about the structural supply deficit for so long, saying, there's not going to be enough pounds to go in and all this, but nothing sort of really moved the needle yet on a big takeoff for uranium. But look at the reaction that the market had on the 3 Mile Island thing. One just saying like probably a bit more imminent nuclear capacity coming online. So that's like, right, they will need pounds. Big tick for the whole data center thing. The fact that Microsoft are putting a cock on the block to say, we want to secure this plant to supply a data center. So that sort of validated a bit of that thesis a bit. So
totally.
It looks like, it was. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out with the rest of your Amazons and your Meta and everyone else that's going to be in this whole data center thing, because Microsoft is just one of them.
Yeah, well, we saw Amazon a good few months ago already say they were keen on it, and there was a bit of a tick up across all the U stocks, right? And then this one's, a bit more concrete. So you can see the real kind of kick up. And like you say, it'd be interesting to see what the others start doing and whether there's any sort of capacity within the US for them to, fast track permits or anything like this, as the tick up in power demand is pretty substantial over the sort of coming 5 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think, and we're still yet to see the contracting cycle begin for this 5-6 years down the road. So, mate, it could be a big back end of the year. I know, like, this UEC thing, where obviously our network is in North America is obviously not what it is in Australia, so it's probably not in the weeds as I hoped. But I do want the American listeners to tell us, who is the American equivalent to MMS in regards to open pit contracting? Because like this is when they're talking about the conventional hard rock mining and the restart and everything. I'm thinking MMS, but I'm like, who's the American equivalent?
That's a really hard question. No one comes to mind.
Well, because if we don't find out who it is, we are going to be pretty much forced to get MMS to expand into North America to fulfill the potential for this nuclear renaissance. So,
if they have,
I think they're pretty unparalleled, Matty.
I think so.
I don't think there's a direct comparison for a group like that.
Their competitive advantage is being like nimble, flexible, just getting on with it. So, if there isn't a contender in the United States, then it kind of just makes sense for them to take the job.
Logical growth expansion.
Yeah.
You think the likes of like, your Black Cat, your Red 5, Corinthian Mining, Legacy Iron Ore, Karora before they got taken over. Like they all had the early contracts with MMS. They're going to be at the pub in future saying we had the first ever open pit contracts with MMS. It'll be like a badge of honour for them, and that's when MMS become an absolute multi-billion-dollar international mining services provider. That's where we're going. That's where they're heading. I'd recommend getting on the journey with them. Money miners out there.
Go yeah, man.
I'm excited to be on the journey, mate.
Oh, love it. Righto, JD, take a bit of real North American feel today. Love it. We're heading to the far east of Canada, Newfoundland.
Yeah, this one's really up our alley. So late last week, I think it was Thursday, but Friday, our time in Australia, a short report surfaced for this company, Newfound Gold. So on the Thursday in North America, they sort of peeled off 5%. They sort of recovered a bit on Friday, and then they peeled off another couple percent yesterday. But I'm pretty excited to talk about this one, guys. Just sort of sifting through the short report. I think there's a good bit for us to kind of tuck into.
Mate,
Right.
who is Newfound Gold?
Mate, I've had to do a bit of reading myself, but they're not a tiny company. Market cap over 700 million. They own the Queensway Gold Project, like you said, Matty, out in Newfoundland, with a market cap that was well over $1 billion in the past year. So as you can see in the chart there, it's been up and down a bit, but they've got some sort of A-listers, if you like, on the registry. Eric Sprott holds 19%, as the company is pretty keen to point out, and he sort of tipped in $260 million over 5 different rounds over a number of years.
Oh.
Yeah, and then you've also got Palisades Gold. So they own about 27% of the company. Their sort of largest shareholder, owning 28% of them, is Colin Kettle, and he is the CEO of this group. So bit to kind of work out there, but between the two of them, they're speaking for about 50% of the registry. And like you kind of hinted at before, Matty, these guys are Canada listed on the TSXV as well as on the NYSE.
That Palisades Gold, is that a fund, or what is Palisades?
So Palisades is itself a listed entity,
Right?
And they hold stakes in, obviously their biggest stake is in this one here, but they got stakes and a whole portfolio of warrants and other sort of knickknacks in Canadian juniors, essentially.
Gotcha. You always see it on YouTube, the Palisades Gold Radio or whatever.
Oh,
is that the same?
Yeah,
is that the same?
Yeah, they've got a podcast and a YouTube sort of channel as well.
Gotcha.
Kind of like us.
we just don't own 25% of any companies other than our own.
No. Bit of a difference. So let's get into the report now. There's the key critique here is that this is a super sort of nuggety gold project that lacks continuity in its mineralization. These guys have drilled over 500 kilometers and they haven't chucked up a resource.
Jesus.
So that is that's the standout takeaway you get in the first few dot points of that short report. But I think it's
500 kilometers is so much drilling. That's like wow. Yeah. That is so much drilling to not provide a resource.
It is indeed.
It takes years to do that much drilling.
Well, they picked up the asset in sort of 2016 and over time added tenements and a few other bits and pieces around it. But 2016 is when it kind of started, and then they've got what they kind of call discoveries sprinkling in every other year, starting sort of the 2019, 2020. In 2020, from then to the next year, they jumped 10x on some of these discoveries, as they call it. Obviously, the short report is pretty critical of these discoveries, as you can kind of go and read. It's pretty easy to find, but yeah, they really just highlight the lack of continuity, the fact that previous owners had kind of drilled in these areas and it was to be expected on some of the hits that they were getting. Interestingly, on the more corporate side, you've got 4 sell-side analysts covering the stock. So BMO, Paradigm, Roth, and National Bank of Canada, and their target prices, haven't been updated in a little while, but they're all sort of 2.5 to 3.5 times the current price. And I had to sort of crank one open. I found this pretty hilarious. So the the name of the research entity that has written the report is called Iceberg Research. And the most recent title, which came out over a month ago, so well before this report, is called Just the Tip of the Iceberg.
Oh,
that is kind of fortuitous.
How good's that?
That
right.
is interesting.
So who's actually shorting it, JD?
Yeah, so disclosed up front, these guys, Iceberg Research, they've written the report. They are short the stock. Naturally, like you get with a lot of these short sellers, specialist short sellers, not hedge funds that run a short book as a part of a broader portfolio. But these guys are pretty undercover. It's hard to find too much color about them. There's that is one of the big criticisms of groups like this. But historically, groups like this have kind of copped it quite a bit as well. So there are kind of good reasons for them to be pretty private about things. But first and foremost, they have a financial interest in seeing the stock go down. The one bit of info you can get is this sort of pseudonym of the founder, a guy called Arnold Wagner. And he's actually got a bit of a history. This is really interesting. So he wrote a series of short reports about Noble Group. I don't know if that rings a bell for you guys, but they were a huge commodity trader. And he started writing these reports in 2015. They, at the time, were a big publicly listed company led by this billionaire founder who'd started the company in the 80s. They were a sort of giant of the industry, listed in Singapore. And he accused them of accounting fraud. Noble then accused him of being just a disgruntled former junior employee. But, history sort of showed it ended pretty nasty for Noble. They ultimately delisted. The stock dropped 99%.
Ooh.
They had to do a massive restructuring with obviously the equity kind of getting wiped out in the process.
Oh, so it appears Arnold might have been right.
Right.
It does look that way.
See, the crux of this report is they've done heaps of drilling and never provided a resource over all this time. Plus, you've got like real doubts about the continuity of the ore body that maybe the market's factoring in there. Was that like as far as the report went?
Yeah. So the title of the report is Lies, Misinterpretations, and a Professional Stock Promoter. So that kind of tells you a bit, mate. It goes a bit beyond the lack of continuity. As we said, they've done a heap of drilling. They're on their way to 650 kilometers, still with no real plan to whack a resource around that. You've also got the fact that the British Columbia Securities Commission pulled them up in 2022 for smearing. So these guys then had to go and correct a number of the reports that they put out. Though the short report says they didn't even go and correct all of their statements. A lot of them are still pretty misleading, and you can sort of work that out by marrying up the more detailed technical reports with, shorter announcements that they'd put out. And for those sort of wondering, smearing is essentially trying to make those high grade hits look like they spread over a kind of wider area to make the continuity look better than it might actually be in reality. They also kind of accuse them of presenting the cross sections really poorly, presenting data very poorly. So it's very hard for analysts to go and actually see what's going on. And of course, like I said in the title, being led by a career stock promoter. So this point is super, super interesting. And I won't go into the whole history of the managing director, the CEO, like the report does. You can just easily go in and read that one. But the interesting point is that both the chairman and the CEO play pretty important roles in the mining news sort of world in Canada. So they are owners of CEO.ca, the Northern Miner, mining.com, and a few other groups. So to be fair to them, I did read an article in mining.com about this exact story, had a disclaimer at the bottom. They weren't trying to defend anyone. They just sort of represented the facts. So you can see a good bit of independence in the reporting there. But it does kind of show a bit of a conflict of interest in my opinion, the fact that these guys have those stakes in those media companies, and that kind of ties in well with one of the key accusations that they are a kind of slick marketing machine, if you like. I'm not sure if you guys had kind of thoughts on that.
I think if you're talking led by a career stock promoter, think of Ivanhoe, hey? Good old Robert Friedland.
Yeah, stock promotion isn't sort of, by itself a bad thing, and it's in part pretty necessary in the industry, right? You need to make a name for yourself. It becomes blurry if you're if you're misrepresenting the facts, not accusing them of doing that here, but it's it's an interesting sort of line to balance and sort of walk.
Yeah, I got maybe two comments. One is that to do that much drilling and not put out a resource is just absurd. I can't fathom it. If it was an ASX company, we'd have called it out yonks ago. And then the other point is, I often see this a lot, particularly with the Canadian companies. Is like, when you hear a lot of the promotion of certain stocks go something along the lines of this. Eric Sprott's invested in it, or Rick Rule's invested in it, or XYZ kind of Ross Beatty's invested in it. There's a lot of like this kind of like trying to convince retail or the public by leveraging on someone else's reputation who is an investor in it. I just think overweighting that sort of signaling is really like a kind of a bad strategy if you base your personal investments off of it, because it devoids yourself of making your own investment decision based off your own due diligence. And the reality is, I can remember another thing where Eric Sprott was a big shareholder in and it lacked continuity. Anyone else remember Novo Resources? The nuggety watermelon seeds? So I just, I've got no idea how this will all unfold. But, I just hope that people don't get kind of sucked into investment theses, with the big selling point being, one of these big name people is a backer of it.
Yeah, I think people probably automatically think they see those names and that they make an assumption. They're thinking, right, that big name has done their due diligence and thinks it's their next big thing. So that's like, whether that's the case or not is the unknown thing. And I think how much weight you put to that. But then realistically, you get that friggin' market flow behind it. They're like, oh, Sprott's in it, oh, buddy, and then everyone starts going, and just make sure you get out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Matty. You see that all the way through. You see that with people pointing to debt investors, say, oh, they did the work. They've got, the availability of way more data. Let's just piggyback on that. And on the point that you raised, Trav, also a really good one, but you don't know the price that some of these guys bought in at. They know the weight of their name, and, not accusing any of them of anything, but they might have picked up warrants, or they might have come in on a placement or something like that. So you need to be pretty cognizant of all of those things. So to kind of round out on the company, they haven't put out any response, which is also somewhat bizarre to me. It's been a number of days now, and it's not like they don't know about it. Obviously, they came out and posted new drilling results without, not even a kind of cursory acknowledgement of the short report floating around, which I find interesting to kind of say the least. So,
JD, have you got any what these intersections are, like what grades we're talking about, or thicknesses?
Absolutely. So to give an example of the kind of smearing accusation before, they're sort of 0.4 meters by 400 grams per ton, and they've been represented as 2 or 3 meters by 50 grams per ton. Or, that's the kind of thing. It's super high grade. They speak about it as being quite a nuggety project, but perhaps that isn't kind of weighted. But there are plenty of results out there you can go and see.
Yeah, I suppose technically that would be the reserve grade of it, because that's what you have to mine to get it out. So it's sort of technically correct. Like if you got 0.4 over 400, you got to take it out at a 3 meter stope. That's probably what it would be.
Yeah, I mean that the onus is kind of on them, right? To put out a resource in a bit of a shape, right? That
and that doesn't that's a reserve. That's not a resource. Should be the most accurate description of the vein.
What's in there? And to the point of the resource, again, there was technical experts that these guys hired that said they can do one for 300 grand. These guys have spent tens of millions of dollars on drilling, and they themselves said it'll cost $300,000 to do a resource. They're not without the resources, pardon the pun, to do a resource estimate. They will have the grade and tonnage. They'll know all of this. They'll want to know whether the additional drilling that they are doing is adding value overall to the project. And you as a shareholder, you'd want to make sure your capital being invested every time these guys do a raise is being adequately and appropriately allocated to the different sort of projects that they have there. So, I mean, you've got other red flags as well, which kind of stand out. The fact that they were pulled up by the regulator, the fact that they're making the data pretty hard to collate. They've got a big at the money facility, which is, something I'm just not kind of a fan of. So there's a few kind of hairy things about this one, sort of I would kind of steer clear. But if you're a shareholder, you've got a clear set of questions just to go and ask management, and hopefully they can address them one by one and just listen to what they have to say. I'd be very keen to hear how they, pull apart this report and what they say to it.
Best practice is to be iterating your internal resource model as your new hits kind of come in. You're not. It's not like these discrete kind of things where you go, got to do my 500 kilometers of drilling and then do my resource model. You kind of like you do it all at the same time. You got a geos on the rig. You're putting in your your data and all that sort of stuff.
What was your thing about the exploration? Thought the bloody try and fail or whatever? What was the saying? Bloody
fail fast.
Fail fast.
Yeah.
There doesn't appear that they've taken that approach. If it is there is questions on the continuity, but we don't know until we see a resource. If it proves to be nothing, which I'm sure there's something there, but bloody K-Drill could have told them after 50 kilometres of drilling, probably go elsewhere.
50 kilometres?
Instead of 500. They'd be like, mate, this doesn't look like it's stacking up. They have integrity as a drilling business.
They do.
They do. In bloody Australia or North America where they end up. They drilled some bloody RC and diamond holes over the years, those boys. They could, they talk about you leapfrog an ore body.
Yeah.
You can K-drill an ore body. Because they're watching the bloody the RC chips and the core come out. They've got a mental map of what that ore body looks like before it even gets assayed. Those blokes, mate, years and years of experience. And ripping blokes.
They wouldn't, mate, things like this just wouldn't happen on their watch.
No, they wouldn't. I'm sure they'd love the extra 450 kilometres of drilling. But the biggest thing about K-Drill is their reputation. Yeah. They don't want anything to bloody hinder that. Yeah. Give old Druber an email. He's in the show notes. You might get some exploration holes out of him.
You get him a record pace.
Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Record meters, I don't know if there can be a record for sample management process, but these guys would have it.
Record safety and record for just good yarns over a beer.
Walking away feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never walked away feeling bad about myself after talking to Ryan or Druber. Thank you, lads.
Well said, Matty.
Righto. Travis, Adriatic, a bit of an operational update for the Bosnian mining producer.
Yeah, I've been following Adriatic closely and
haven't yarned about him for a bit, have we?
No. Yeah, but still following. So, yesterday afternoon they provided this operational update webinar to shareholders. So of course I tuned into the webinar because I think we've covered a bit why Adriatic is in that fascinating phase of its life cycle, right? Ramp up. And they've had some real obstacles to navigate in this phase. I'm probably missing a bunch of these obstacles, but in quick kind of summary, the obstacles that I can remember are, they're developing a mine in a country that hasn't had a mine developed in God knows how long. Ground support challenges getting through the early development works. Mining contractor challenges resulting in Adriatic bringing it in-house instead. Tragic death of a local contractor on site. They've been the recipient of their own short report. They rejigged the kind of mine reserves plan with generally like lower grade than there was previously. There was a ruling by the Constitutional Court of Bosnia which effectively suspended the felling of trees, which impacted Adriatic's permitted tailing storage facility at VRIFY, the waste rock storage at Rupus, and the location of the planned paste plant. So, and then in the last 5 months, Adriatic CFO, COO, and CEO have all resigned from the company. Now there's an interim CEO and an interim CFO at the helm. The interim CEO is this ex-BHP bigwig, Laura Tyler. She was a non-executive director at Adriatic for only 6 weeks before becoming interim CEO. Meanwhile, the interim CFO is Michael Horner, who was previously heading up Adriatic's business development function. Unlike Laura Tyler, Michael Horner, he'd at least been at Adriatic for a few years beforehand, and he forked up $100,000 of cash to buy more shares in Adriatic yesterday.
Oh, that's good sign of confidence.
It's probably also worth highlighting that even with all of that, Adriatic share price, it isn't all that far off from its all-time highs. Like it's been somewhat resilient in sort of recent history. You can see in the Spark chart in Australian dollars, $3.58 today. That's versus an all-time high of $4.90. And kind of that gives the company a fully diluted market cap today of about 1.2 billion Australian. And that's after the stock actually bounced today up 9%. And the short interest has climbed to 7% of the CDIs alone. You can just see that kind of short interest chart kind of flying.
Oh, wow. Particularly
interesting is the shareholder on the register that appears to be buying into the fear, L1 Capital, an Aussie hedge fund. I feel like we mention L1 Capital always in these really interesting points of time. They kind of just bet against the fear.
They go against the grain. Well, they'll do it with NextGen too, I think.
They were kind of doing that sort of. I remember them being kind of near the top, sort of being loud about NextGen, and then they've had some howlers as well, but especially mining. But in aggregate, their returns are pretty good. So L1 Capital, they appear to have been buying in February, but they ratcheted up pretty consistently. They now have 36.6 million shares, or about 11% of the fully diluted share capital of Adriatic.
So that's the total, not just the CDI,
exactly.
The total. Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Orion, who has the debt facility with Adriatic, keep in mind, they've been trimming their equity position. Apparently it was around 8.3% around a year ago, but today, per sort of Adriatic's website, it says their stake is 3.7%. So you've got the debt financier sort of trimming. Although apparently Orion, I'd heard previously they were starting a new fund, so they were realising kind of positions and stuff. Yep. So I don't know if there's a read through there or not, but with all that out of the way, you can kind of see why Adriatic is really bloody interesting right now, can't you?
Very much so. They're at a very they're at a very like a reset point in a way with all that happening, and because it wasn't like brilliant grades there, like that. The best thing they got on their side is the grades of the ore body, but the challenges they went through getting the capital development in for the ground conditions, obviously pretty hard, and all those other things you mentioned, and then tough for. You've got expat people living over there to run this company in Bosnia, which presents its own challenges on a personal level, which I'm not sure if that's the case of what's happened. So it's a tough one to maintain long-term consistency with. I think it's a big ask.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, has there been a single mine developed in the past 2 to 3 years that hasn't? That has been smooth. It's I can't remember one that's in recent history that's been smooth. It's been a long time since one's been smooth, right?
Karlawinda?
That was 2020, 2019.
Yeah.
Then you got to go back a fair while, and then if a typical company kind of building a mine and developing it faces just one of these issues, it's a pretty it can be pretty tumultuous. That there's a lot to sort of juggle as a single asset developer. And hence
it's fascinating how resilient the stock has been in amongst all those sorts of challenges. Obviously, they really ticked up when base metals performed really strongly in sort of May-ish period in the sort of 3 months in and around then. But with all the challenges they've faced, they're, like you said, still within touching distance of all-time highs, performing really strongly. So. What did you sort of make from tuning into that operational update that they kind of provided? What were the takeaways you had?
I was expecting like a bit of a detailed kind of operational update to come out in the press releases, but it was literally like a slide deck with 3 real pages in it, and the webinar was largely a Q&A where sort of substance came from the answers. But I'll play this opening from Laura. This is what she opened with.
I've spent the time working through all of this, and I see no fatal flaws.
No fatal flaws. It's a relieving message to get. No fatal flaws. It's like an independent technical expert, like no fatal flaws report that you get the sign off on. But like I think in a nutshell, to summarise all of the stuff that came out, Adriatic, they finally started stoping. Hence, you can see this big leap in the ore tons in the month of August there. Apparently, the first stope had a few issues. To quote Laura, she said, a few issues pulling through the slot against the fault boundary of the ore body. Apparently, the design has been tweaked to prevent that issue from the second stope. But Matty, what does that actually mean?
Well, the slot is it's your first void you create. So like to start firing everything into. So they'll chuck a box hole up like a 1 metre, usually a 1 metre bloody void, circular void, or they'll drill a long hole rise with reamers and all that. But if you sort of got a fault running through if that is the case against the fault boundary of the ore body, unless there's a fault running through where they're pulling it through, that fault is like can discontinue things. So when the explosives go off, the energy might dissipate out through the fault and not actually blast the rock fully. So they might have like bridged it. Usually if there's an issue with the stope, it's been bridged, which means that instead of bloody 20 metres came out, only 15 come out or something. Then you got to do a lot of work to try and get the rest out. So I'd say that's what's something like that has happened. But if they've had issues, it just means it hasn't pulled to height or something like that. So,
Yeah,
faults and friggin' contacts and stuff through the middle of
not fun.
Bit of a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So on the guidance, so the ore tons, production ore tons kind of guidance for CY24 is now lower than previously flagged. They now say it's going to be 180,000 tons versus the previous range lower bound, which was 240,000 tons. And while like last time they guided grade, as you can see in this slide here, the guidance update that they put out sort of yesterday didn't include guidance of grade. The other bit I found that I can't quite piece together on the guidance is, you can see in the slide deck they put out yesterday, Adriatic explicitly says that guidance for CY25 is unchanged, but they say it's unchanged at 750,000 to 800,000 tonnes. But if I flash back up the prior guidance, which I'm snipping from the equity raise presentation, the upper bound is actually lower by 50,000 tonnes. So unless I've missed something, CY25 guidance is in fact a bit lower too. To the TSF issue, right? Because this has been a big spanner in the works to have to deal with this constitutional ruling. So Adriatic, they say they have this alternative location for the TSF now, which will be 2 kilometres away. So they expect construction approval in October. Keep in mind that's going to be after there's these municipal elections. I googled and they're on the 6th of October. So I suppose they're expecting the newly elected officials to be speedy quick into to sort of get these approvals sort of done, and then they say that construction will be completed. They're going to aim to complete that by the end of the year. If they can execute that, that'd be a pretty remarkable kind of time frame to do all of that. Meanwhile, their temporary TSF, which they're using at the moment, it's near the plant, that hits capacity in Q1 2025, which I imagine is a pretty big motivator for that speedy timeline to get approvals and construction all sort of done by the end of this year. So hopefully they can achieve that without any interruption to production. Right? Adriatic, they addressed the TSF like I talked about, but like I said, the location of the paste plant is also an issue, and this work stream, Laura said, it's actually on hold for the time being, or at least constructing it, and CY25 is on hold with the constitutional ruling. They say they're looking at alternative locations for the paste plant, but this is the interim solution. I'll play for you what she said there.
We always had planned to use CAF or cemented aggregate fill in our stopes, so the processes are in place to do that. We'll use obviously some of our waste rock as aggregate, as well as import some quality aggregate. We've got all those contracts in place. That work is already commencing for the first stope. This was always in the plan. We just now have to extend the CAF placement for an additional few months, but we don't see it as being a long-term solution. We will move to having a paste plant as the long-term solution for filling all of the stopes.
I was keen to leverage your expertise again, Maddie.
You boys should have enough after the last year, eh? You could have subbed in here.
What are some of the challenges like using CAF over the long run instead of paste, and like, you know, what are the issues if they can't, you know, get a paste plan up in a medium term time frame?
Yeah, so it depends on where it's being deposited into the stope. So like CAF is cemented aggregate fill, so it's like crushed rock down, whereas CRF is just like they'll just blast any waste heading, tip it in a stockpile, mix it with cement and water and tip it in. So CAF is like, if you're importing aggregate, that obviously costs a bit. You need extra loaders to tip it into the stopes. And then if you're like tipping it in from the front of the stope, you can only get it to a certain point for the rill angle. Then you've got to advance the tip head forward to sort of fill the whole thing, because you're going to be, and depends if the ground's, assuming all the ground is still supported above you. So there's challenges there. So it takes longer to put it in, tipping it in with a loader, compared to like paste just pumping it down, because paste you're just using the old tailings. There's obviously the capital for the paste plant and then the reticulation to put in, but you do it's the quickest way to get it in there. And it's a lot easier product to develop back through. So whenever you paste fill a stope, there's always a chunk that you have to develop back through, usually to go and access the next one, usually on the sides of it.
Gotcha.
So that's, and trying to bloody develop back through CAF and CRF is a
much
nightmare.
harder.
You can't drill holes in, or you just got
Really?
to try and, because it all just falls back in. It's a freaking it is a friggin' nightmare.
Yeah.
You just got to put stope primers in there and blow the living fuck out of it, pretty much.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
But then depends if they set, like, funnily enough, Olympic Dam, like the fucking how big that joint is, all those stopes, to my knowledge, there's no paste plant there. All those stopes are filled with, there's just friggin' boreholes from the surface, and they have a big quarry on top, and that quarry just mines waste, produces aggregate, and there's just adgies that tip CAF down those boreholes to fill the stope. It's just this big, massive surface operation that just keeps tipping CAF down these boreholes. So that's how Olympic Dam's actually filled. It's not filled via paste.
Wow.
So,
that is so
it
interesting.
depends on, not sure that they're dependent on how the ore bodies are set up, if that'd be an option here. But usually if you got to do it, you got to tip it from underground. So it's just it's just slower, which means it slows your production profile down a bit.
Yeah.
You can't get to the next stope as quick.
Yeah.
Because paste, you're jamming in over 1,000 cubes a day, whereas CAF you might only get 500 in or something.
Gotcha.
So
yeah.
Oh God, I'm starting to forget all my underground mining shit. I'm a bloody washed up has-been. So half of it's probably wrong these days.
Yeah.
So,
And well, like when they described the three things that were impacted by the court ruling, one was the tailings facility, the other one was the location of the paste plant, but it was also mentioned that the long-term waste rock storage near Rupus was impacted. But on the webinar, I didn't hear anything about what the workaround was for that in the webinar. But maybe something else has been guided separately. I don't know.
well, that's the one benefit of doing CRF, is that you don't have to take as much rock to the surface, because you get to use it to backfill the stopes.
Okay.
So
Yeah. And Batty, in the past when we talked about this, you've drilled down on the development rates that they were kind of getting in a tough ground. It sounds like the rates that they had in the DFS, which were 600 meters, sounds like those numbers are kind of null and void, and they've got sort of they've readjusted to a new normal. I'll play what Laura says about that.
So with the development, originally the schedule for development to bring production in required a much higher rate than was achieved, like a significantly higher rate than was being achieved. So that development has been now basically achieved over a longer time period. What it does mean, though, is we need to be at 300 plus going forwards the rest of 24 and then into 25 and beyond. In some instances where we're opening up brand new kind of access through the decline, we might have slight variability from one month to the next, but that 600 meters is no longer required. That was the initial requirement that we needed in order to start the stoping up. We've now got stoping in place, and we're looking at the schedule. We believe a 300 plus is going to be what we require going forwards to 24, the rest of 24 and into 25. I don't have the fine detail in front of me right now on a kind of like the monthly rates as we go forwards, but looking at an average of 300 to 350 through 25 is what we are expecting to see and to require to maintain production.
And so obviously their comment about opening up the additional decline levels and accesses, because from what we know, we did speak to the company about it, is that all the shit ground is in the capital and the waste area outside the ore body, whereas the ore body itself sounds like pretty standard bolts and mesh. So your development rates when you get in the ore will jump up a lot higher. They naturally do anyway, because it's a smaller excavation and there's usually multiple of them together. But then the better ground conditions as well. So I think that variability they're talking about is if they have to do anything in those capital areas, that's where it really slows down, because that's where they've got to put the the shitloads of ground support, the concrete sets in the intersections and things like that. So but to our knowledge, the actual ground is a lot better in the ore. Yeah. So it should the capital is the bottleneck there, capital development. Yeah.
Yeah. And like with all that sort of said, you know, they're still stating that that they're going to achieve sort of statutory commercial production by year end, but sort of think Q1 onwards at, you know, doing that 800,000 tonnes per annum is what they're sort of signalling to the market. I think like the next chapter for Adriatic is unwritten, and many different views make a market. And I'm so curious because, like I say, it's in that ramp up phase. Grade is forgiving. They got grade on their side, but there's so many obstacles that they have faced and you know still continue to face in a country that doesn't have a really thorough kind of mining economy like Australia.
Yeah, but their sensitivity, grade is forgiving, but you think of when you're running 800,000 tonne per annum, really high grade. Imagine if your grade doesn't reconcile to what it should be, and the met recovery isn't there. Fuck, it can swing so quickly.
Totally,
it could go the other way too.
Yeah. And on the recoveries, like they're aiming to increase them to 70% in Q4. Yeah, and they haven't been able. They're still running the plant on campaign mode. They haven't they're hoping to kind of tweak that over time. But Laura even made the comment that they never did a pilot plant kind of thing. So a lot of the stuff they're doing now is kind of pilot plant-esque. So, I think there's reason to be kind of, to have question marks on what is the long-term recovery going to be as well, because it might still be uncertain how much the plant can be optimised.
Yeah. Bloody good stuff.
Yeah.
I just put up a prezzo from about a year and a half ago, and you can see 2024, this was meant to be a year of 284 millions in post-tax free cash flow.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how quick things have kind of turned, but they're still going pretty decently strong. And here's kind of hoping that they can pull through with the grades and everything. There is still the opportunity for pretty strong cash flow in the near term if they can get it right.
Yeah, and the repetition as well when you're dealing with that shit ground and everything. Like the fact that they've done it before now, they know it's there, they know what to do. That should be on their side.
The big risk that I see is just any blowout in the timeline of that TSF, right? Because it to me felt pretty ambitious to have that kind of solution solved by the end of the year. But saying it would be done by the end of the year allowed them to say there will be no interruption to production, which is would be a relieving thing for shareholders to hear. I can't help but think it would still be kind of an ambitious job to happen, and there might still be some uncertainty around the ability to build it in the way that they want and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, God, they might have to revert to what your Pogo and that have to do, where all tailings have to be deposited underground.
Wow,
which not feasible in an early stage mine. I think it's when you got a historic mine, you can just start filling up levels and shit. I think that's doable, but it wouldn't be plausible here, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Debt repayments start at the end of this year, December 31. So
yeah, and they've still got a $25 million undrawn facility with Orion that
recent one they picked up.
Depending how things go, they might have to dip into that too. But we'll wait and watch.
Yeah. God, fingers crossed. As I said, always ramp up like this. Bloody rooting for you. Hope it works.
Never easy, eh?
Fuck, Jesus Christ, these bloody stomach cramps. You know, the metaphor for the stomach cramps, like there's a jaw crusher with a shitload of mesh and bolts stuck in it, and I need old Miles Contractor to come and rip it out.
You'll love that. Shout out, Marcy.
Fuck, killing me. Righto. Oh, thanks to the bloody partners. Bloody sorry, I've turned up. I did my best for you. Please still pay us. Thanks to bloody the trusted advisor, Axis Mining Technology, MMS, going global and international as a mining service company. VRIFY, ADIA, get your tickets for Drill 24 in the show notes. DSI Underground, Silverstone, CRE Insurance, Greenlands Equipment, the bloody sample management experts, K-Drill, and you would have loved a spark chart in there.
Hootaroo.
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 The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.